Good evening and welcome to Frankly Speaking, where truth is our mission, reality our realm, said as we see it, and frankly as well. 3,000
but it's the
horsepower.
next iteration of an existing system.
But it's a design. It's not manufacturing anything.
I think there should be, there are restrictions. You have to be licensed to carry a weapon.
Addiction, and I think that if we took a more compassionate approach, we might find more of a solution.
Radical swing of the pendulum. Now we're, it's more liberal, more progressive, more.
It's time for us to honor those folks who, send comments to it.
And good evening. This is the day after, and welcome to Frankly Speaking, where truth is our mission, rally our realm, said as we see it, and frankly as well. And we're going to be very frank today. Paul, welcome back. I missed you.
Joe, are you wearing red because of anything in particular?
I did, but now
You look like the
map,
the
electoral map.
electoral map, and
Yeah. Maybe it
Little
was
spots of blue here.
Yeah, maybe it was subliminal. Winners and losers, Paul. Let's throw up those winners and losers. Now, I have a smiling face in Donald Trump, and rightfully so. By the way, he gave an outstanding, a very nice acceptance
Very
speech. Humble.
Yep.
And and he's surrounded.
It was healing too. I think that's
Very
the
much
key to
so,
it,
as opposed to what I heard from Barack Obama driving here today, by the way.
And can I say that, while I absolutely am 100% behind the idea of now healing and bringing together the 160 million people, 125 or 130 million people that voted, just about half went one way and just about half went the other. We need to bring all those people together. But I still think that there is some work to do to address the propaganda and the one-sided bias that exists in all of those institutions that are currently running
We're
this
going to get
country.
to that. That's part of our program today. Let's just run down this quickly. Underneath Donald Trump with a smiling face, I have a pensive Charlie Baker. Yeah. And he's a real loser in many, many ways. First of all, he would not back Trump. He was in the same universe as the Bushes and Romney and the never Trump type of people, and that came back to and Kasich. You think Kasich, who went against Trump
In
Trump
Ohio,
beat Hillary by 11 points in Ohio.
I know it.
Isn't that hilarious? So you think he's got a place to go? You think he's going to be rebuilding the Republican Party? That Republican Party is gone.
Right.
The party of the elitists who backed, by the way, Hillary Clinton.
In effect, yeah.
Yeah. So Charlie Baker's part of that losing cadre.
Yeah.
So he's got no shot, and they're not going to help him. His chances for re-election. You think that Donald Trump and the Republican Party is going to come into Massachusetts and help him now? He only won by 40,000 votes, Paul. Okay? And guess what? Didn't he get behind one of the tickets, one of the questions on the ballot?
You got behind question 2, yeah.
A big one.
And that loss, yeah.
Which one was that? Was the one about school choice, charter schools?
Right.
I was ambiguous on that one myself.
Really too bad when you think about it. Now, you can say what you want about Charlie Baker, and while I agree that he probably should have taken one for the team, if you will, at the time when everybody was afraid to support, or a lot of people were afraid to support Donald Trump. I know I was. I mean, it took me a while to come around. I mean, you were there right from the very beginning. I came along much slower. In the end, I was giddy about it.
Because I understood something, Paul. Whenever you have everybody ganging up against you, particularly from the quarters from which you came, doesn't that tell you something?
Right.
Because that gang, the dastardly gang, you want to talk about a basket of deplorables? They were the basket of deplorables. Right. Then you know there's got to be something about this guy. Why were they throwing dots at him? Every single newspaper in the United States, except for 2, endorsed him in the editorial pages, right? Wall Street did, all of Silicon Valley, all of the money people. She spent $2 billion vilifying that guy.
Joe, I never really came around to Donald Trump because I always had my issues with Donald Trump. I don't like his bombast and that whole, the egocentric and all that kind of stuff. What made me come around to him was the fact that he was representing the people, unlike any candidate that I have seen since Ronald Reagan. And that's what made me fall in line with him. And the fact of the matter is, the winner was not Donald Trump per se, it was the people that he's representing.
He said categorically from the beginning, I'm a messenger. This is not about me.
Right. Right?
That's refreshing, isn't it?
It sure is.
Winners. Well, one is, and we got to give a bouquet to Captain Carpenter, who is now the sheriff of Nottingham. You know?
Yeah. Chief Coppinger.
I want to keep calling him Captain.
Yeah. I don't know. That's like a demotion for crying out loud.
Not in my universe. I always thought the captain is above the chief.
I think it's great. Kevin, Lynn guy, always been very popular within the police force. When I was on the city council, I had to work with him on a number of matters when he was the deputy and when he was the chief. Always found him to be very accessible, easygoing, nice guy. I'm happy for him. And I'm happy for the city of Lynn.
And he ran a good campaign, Paul.
Yep.
He went out there, and you're right. He went out there, he did due diligence, and congratulations, Chief
Right.
Carpenter, now Sheriff. And not of Nottingham, of Essex County, but I was just a play a word. And this one really pleased me in a sense, because talk about a very nice man is Mr. Wong.
Donald Wong, right.
Donald Wong.
You know what his slogan was? He told me this himself. He says, you can't go Wong with Donald Wong.
Yeah. But you know what happened? He did an interesting thing. I'm driving around, and all of a sudden I see all these antique cars. Driving, maybe half a dozen of them, doing Wong, driving, getting hardly any signs. No backing from the establishment, so to speak, right?
Well, all his votes came from Saugus and Wakefield. He got clobbered in Lynn Wards 1, Precinct 1 and 2.
Does that surprise you?
No, it doesn't.
I mean, when has Lynn ever had a little diversity?
Right. And and I had it on pretty good authority that the high turnout was going to be the death knell for Donald Wong, and it wasn't. It's good.
Yeah, everybody said that
because there was a high turnout in the
National.
conservative precincts as well.
Well,
right?
The prognosticators aren't all that good, are they?
No.
Yeah.
They had to throw out the political mold now. The next presidential cycle is going to be very different than anything
I never
we've ever seen.
speak ill of my own tribe, but Larry Sabato from the Crystal Ball, right down there in Virginia, the
Right.
great guru of election pundit, has been so wrong on this. Also, Karl Rove, who was ready to swallow his tongue last night, along with Dana Perino.
But so were they wrong though? I mean, if you take the national polls, right, they were ranging from +4 Donald Trump to +4 Hillary Clinton, right? So the final polls and
Paul,
the real clear
they said
poll.
at the end that she was up to 5 or 6, Paul, and they came out with that.
Well, if they said that, of course, I would argue that was intended to try to discourage the Republican vote.
Well,
but my point is, with the margin of error, if there's a let's just say Trump +2 is the final analysis, right? Before the
Well, I'd agree with you, except for one thing. They said categorically, they were giggling and laughing there was going to be a landslide. Okay, so you can make all of that. You can give them a little bouquet. I'm not going to.
I didn't hear them say. I never heard them say landslide.
They were saying it was all over, but the shouting.
Couple of weeks ago.
Oh no, Sabato had her winning 3 and change. As a matter of fact, even today, if you take a look at the AP, they won't tell you what the real result is. They'll say, well, he had 276, 279 electoral votes. No, he didn't. He had 306, 307, because they won't count Arizona, and they haven't count Michigan, which he won, and Alaska.
Right.
That's 30. You had 30, he's up to over 300. So the exact opposite of what they were touting took place.
Right.
All right. And what I'm saying is, if you talk about what he went up against,
right. It was a David and Goliath story, if you've ever seen one, right?
That was unbelievable. He went up against the entire media establishment, Hollywood, Wall Street, tech companies, the globalists, his own party. And by the way, his own party came back. The members of his own party, not the alleged leaders.
Right. He only had one group with him, and that was his special interest, and that was the American people.
That's exactly right.
Right.
You know what he's going to do, Paul? Remember we talked about the organized minority rules the disorganized majority?
Yep.
Well, you know what he's going to do? He's going to organize the majority.
Right. Well,
And that's
I hope he does that, and I hope he, puts some pieces in place that kind of chip away at that, establishment kind of control and the levers of power, because that's got to change. If it's just 4 years of postponing it, going back to the same thing, it's not going to be enough. He actually has to really push back against those, like Wall Street, the big media, the New York Times, the Washington Post, all these.
He has
people,
to, Paul, else he's not
and I'm
going to
not
hold
saying
his base.
right. Yeah, I mean, right. After in 4 years, in the next election, get another establishment person in there, and they'll go right back to the same crap.
I want to fly right through these because I want to spend the balance of our show talking about the things you're talking about. For example, who we might appoint to cabinet positions and things of this nature. Let's finish off with the ballot questions because we did those while you were away. I was 1 for 3. I only got one right, and that was the animals.
Unfortunately, I made the prediction that the state of Massachusetts was going to say no to giving kids school choice and do the marijuana.
You said that, Paul. That's why I came to that.
And and they in the state of Massachusetts voted by, I think it was 65 to 35 in favor of the establishment candidate.
Yeah,
for
you
president.
you have that on a stat sheet there, the spread between.
So
No, right there. You see.
I'm kind of disappointed in us as a collective voting bloc.
They also voted for Hillary Clinton 2-1.
That's what I just said. Yeah,
Yeah.
65 to
So,
35.
Pedro, I mean, if you want to put up that little chart that you have there with the Electoral College by the AP and how those ballot questions went, the one that I had here, yeah. If that one gets up there, and if you notice, I got the only one I got right was the chicken. Chickens, because I have this affection for animals.
Right.
So I voted yes on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, don't worry so much about the kids as long as we take care of the chickens.
I was very interested in the chickens. I love the kids too. Paul, I got a hernia on that one because philosophically, choice is a good concept.
Yep.
Very important. Competition is always good. My difficulty with it is that it's imperfect insofar as if they take these young ladies who are helping us here today from Tech, beautiful young ladies, by the way, and they decide to go to KIPP Academy, the money follows them to KIPP.
Okay, so
then they say, I want to go back to Tech, the money doesn't come back.
So
That's the problem.
So here's the thing, and this
Yeah.
is the thing that's I've always been troubled by public unions. Okay.
Right.
So the term rent seeking, right? Which is basically groups using their political influence to get what they want, not necessarily deserving it, but just using their influence to get what they want. If the teachers union is worried that the current system of creating charters and moving money back and forth is bad for the rest of the kids, but choice is a good thing, let's talk about what we can do instead. Instead, they are saying absolutely not. They are just fighting it tooth and nail. They are not interested in doing anything at all. They want to leave it just the way it is, and that's the part that I don't like.
That's called a monopoly, Paul. Right?
They're
Monop-
rent seekers. Everybody at home, look up the term rent seeking. Just if you don't know what it is, and it will perfectly explain special interests and how they use their influence to get what they want, not for any other reason than it's good for them.
Self-interest.
Self-interest. Yeah.
Truth trumps all. So we have to seek truth.
Yes.
So the marijuana was a winner, big winner, which is going to cause all kinds of problems. As of the 15th, these kids can smoke up a storm if they're 21. Like anybody can tell whether someone's 21 or not. It's going to.
That's going to create all kinds of problems.
I realize that.
Yeah.
So we'll do shows on that because I think that's going to be disastrous. And I'm very disappointed that they voted down the slot machine because I kind of like games of chance. But that's me. The media, Paul. The media was a real loser. And we got this little boom boom with the New York Times, the Post, ABC, NBC, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They got their backsides kicked pretty good, didn't they, huh?
It did, and you know, I don't know how people at home felt about this before we started talking about it. But all these names that are on here, the ones that got their butts kicked, we've been talking about them since we started the show up again, right?
Paul, they were-
We've mentioned every one of NBC, CBS, ABC, The Times, The Post, MSNBC, the Clinton News Network. You know, I mean,
Paul, if he inadvertently said something, they would twist it and they would say he said something to offend this group or that group when he never said it to start with.
right. You know, here's a funny thing about the election. Do you remember when the very first debate, I think it was in the Republican Party, there were 10 Republicans up on the stage, and Chris Wallace says, is anybody out here not willing to support the Republican? And Donald Trump, with a sheepish grin on his face, went like this, right? Nobody else raised their hand, right? The idea of the question was to put Donald Trump on the spot, not to put the 10 people on the spot.
I realize that.
Right? He was the only one who had the audacity to raise his hand, and it caused him all kinds of grief. And it turns out that a number of the people on that stage refused to support him in the end, right?
Who's the most prominent of them all?
Jeb Bush and John Kasich.
All right. And John Kasich thinks he's got a future, and the Democrat, I mean, he's so petty. So petty. He even turned around and wrote in John McCain's name and advertised it.
Right.
He would not show up at the convention that was held in his own state.
Right.
I mean, you don't find something...
Right? No?
You know, Paul Ryan, in all fairness to Paul Ryan, came around at the end. You can argue that...
He was a little late, but he came around.
But they carried Wisconsin for him. That's the first time Wisconsin's gone for a Republican.
It's more Scott Walker, don't you think?
Whatever. Scott Walker, Paul Ryan, Reed.
The whole machine, yep.
Right. But they got behind him and they pulled him over the top. That was one of the most satisfying victories, was Johnson coming back when he was down double digits to what's his name?
Feingold.
Feingold, yeah. I'm so happy he got beat because he was a phony to start with. But look at this. Here's the classic. They were supposed to lose the Senate.
Right?
Didn't happen. You know how many seats they lost in the House of Representatives? 8.
Yeah. Well, you know that there hasn't been a Republican president moving into office with both houses of Congress on his side in 100 years?
Oh, yeah.
Since, I guess, so 1928. That's a long
Calvin
time.
Coolidge.
Calvin Coolidge.
Yeah. My boy, Silent Cal.
From Swampscott.
Silent Cal is fascinating, and if you've heard it before, tell me. But there was a young reporter, we'll call her Dana Perino or Megan Kelly, ran up to him, sauntered up and said, "You see those guys over there? I just made a bet with them that I could get you to say 3 words." And he looked at her and he said,
"You lose."
You lose. I love that. Drain the swamp, and drain the swamp, if we can get that up there. Now, here is why it's a swamp. Washington, D.C., okay? This is the brain trust of our country.
Right. It's never experienced a recession going all the way back in time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because the federal government's...
Because
it's been run
they just kept
terribly.
growing and growing.
Right.
And growing.
They keep getting money from the federal government to subsidize them, and they've had all kinds of problems with their mayors, as you well know.
Right. Plus, they have a terrible homeless problem.
And they have the strictest gun control laws in the country, and they're all shooting each other down there, right? Now listen to this one. Now, this is what's wrong, and this is why it's a swamp. Because there is no way that this could possibly happen. Clinton, 260,223 votes.
In Washington, D.C.
Right.
So
Wait a minute, let me finish.
Over 200,000.
260.
Yep.
Donald Trump, 11,533, or 93% for Hillary and 4% for Donald. Is that possible? That's impossible in any possible...
In mathematics, it's possible.
It's mathematically improbable and impossible. We rail and scream about, Putin, he got 65 or 70% of the vote.
No, he gets 95% of the vote, just like
Which
you
is
say.
about the same as here.
Right, and
so
and
Washington,
that's
D.C.
and he's the only one on the ballot.
Yeah. Moulton. By the speaking of which, do you know how many folks were on the ballot that were challenged? Creighton wasn't challenged. Cahill wasn't challenged. McGee wasn't challenged, and Moulton wasn't challenged. Is something wrong with that?
That's the story of Massachusetts. It's an establishment thing. There will be no. If there's a Republican that comes forward, the machine will crush it. If somebody tries to primary a Democrat candidate, which Moulton did a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah.
And he actually pulled it off, but he had a wounded candidate that he was going after in John Taney because of the issues that he was having. But basically, once you get elected, if you're a Democrat, you get elected, you're in as long as you want, and it's usually until an opportunity comes and they move up, or move out, or whatever it is, as we've seen in the past and we've talked
That's
about.
the way it works.
Yep.
You know, we had a mayor who won and served 2 terms, but never ran against anybody. In fact,
Chip Clancy.
Yeah, he inherited the office when McManus decided.
In fact, he ended up running unopposed as
unopposed.
as a non-incumbent.
Then he ran unopposed as an incumbent, and then he was challenged by Judy Kennedy,
And lost by 27 votes.
and she won on stickers to start with, right, to get on the ballot, which
Right.
is phenomenal. And the only other time he ran for mayor against Tony Marino, he lost.
He won the primary and lost in the...
Anytime he ran against a warm body, he lost. You remember Phelan?
Yeah.
Ran against Kennedy? He had more signs you could shake a stick at. I mean, they were monsters all over the place. I thought that was going to be a tough race. She blew him out by 3,000 votes, didn't she?
Yeah.
Goes to show you. Thoughts, Paulie. Thoughts.
Okay.
All kinds of thoughts for Paul and Joe, huh? So, let us go down to what you've been talking about for a long time, about the inequities of the media and the way it puts you. I'll give you a perfect example. The electoral votes that you see constantly, it's like they forgot that there's Alaska, Arizona, and Michigan, all of which were carried
Right.
by Trump,
Right.
which puts him at 300.
That gets to, the term mandate, right? So if
300 is a mandate, yeah.
right, so I would say 270 is a mandate if you had no chance of winning. You know what I mean? But what they're trying to do is they're trying to downplay his performance so that he can't claim and operate under a mandate. And again, it's the media manipulating our minds so that they can accomplish their ends, which is to minimize his ability to deliver. Now, they wouldn't do that if it was Hillary Clinton. They would have been talking mandate with 270 at a time when, if you flip this stuff around, there would be no mandate for her at 270 if she just barely squeaked by with all the advantages that she had in the first place.
Let me put this to you. She was made Secretary of State by Barack Obama, correct? Yep. In order to prime her to...
Right, so that she could get the frequent flyer miles that she'd put on her resume so that she could...
In order to become president, right?
Had nothing to do with performance.
And Barack Obama and Michelle, the first time in the history that a sitting president went out and campaigned as actively...
Unbelievable.
What he did, right?
He was admonishing the black community
I know that.
to do it to protect his legacy, which is
Here's the classic. Here's the classic. His legacy is gone. But the reason why his legacy is gone, folks, is because back
he did a
in
terrible
2011,
job.
well, in 2011, there was what they call a white tie get-together of the elites, of the organized minority that runs the disorganized majority. And Trump was at that dinner with his wife, and Trump had brought up the birther question at that time. And Barack Obama got up there and vilified him sitting there, embarrassed him to no end with all of the folks there. He didn't do a thing, but inside he said, all right. That was the genesis of him running for president. His whole desire was to become president to undo Obama's legacy, which is exactly what happened now. You want to talk about a winner? That's a winner.
Right. I'll tell you what, I mean, I am just so amazed how, with all the adversity that he faced throughout that he was still able to pull it off. It was just unbelievable.
The most important thing that's going to happen now is filling a Supreme Court, and you can forget the guy that they have there. He's gone. The Supreme Court is going to be pushed to the right, as you well know,
Yep.
right? They're going to repeal Obamacare. and rewrite it. He's going to get rid of all of the executive orders, which you can do like that first day in office, right? He's going to tear up the deal with Iran, which was not done by treaty as it's supposed to be, done by the Senate. You see, what Obama did is try to circumvent the Constitution.
Right. Well, I mean, if you got your choice, you either use Congress or use a pen and a phone, right?
He didn't either.
Well, use the pen and the phone, right?
Well, yeah, but even Obamacare, that was passed by the narrowest of margins,
And
100% by the Democrats.
And you can argue that it wasn't even legal because they used that method of reconciliation when it was when it required 60 votes in the Senate. And it
Who will
only
be
got
Attorney
51.
General, which is very important to see. Bye-bye, Loretta.
I mean, if you go strictly on his top supporters, I would say it's Rudy Giuliani. And
I think
that's
you're right. I think everybody's
that's
looking
great.
forward to that.
Yeah, I think that's great.
So, do you think Comey's going to remain, or do you think he's bye-bye time? He's not supposed to, he's supposed
Well, let's talk about the question of the Clinton Foundation and, investigations and all that kind of stuff. Because I know that, I'm hearing a lot of talk about what Donald Trump should be doing is he should say something very basic like, you know what, I've had a long, divisive campaign. I'm going to just give her a pass and let's move on. Unless that pass includes her disbanding the Clinton Foundation and or promising never to be involved in politics or something, I don't think that he should do that. I think he should use the opportunity to drain the swamp. And part of draining the swamp is getting to the bottom of who were the bad guys and all of that stuff.
I think a lot of folks around the Clintons are in trouble.
Yes.
Huma.
Well, what did I say? Remember
But
when
they're gonna flip.
Remember when Comey first made that announcement 11 days ago or
Right.
whatever? What was that text message I sent to you?
Huh?
I said, it's over,
Yeah.
and a lot of high-level officials are going to jail.
That's exactly right, Paul. And I'm going to say before going to jail, they're going to flip. They're going to yak. So they're going to look. If Hillary had been elected, we would have had to send the special forces to protect Fort Knox.
Well, it was funny. I used to tease the people down at the senior center because they were like, "Why would you want to vote for that guy, Donald Trump?" Right? And I said,
He doesn't need.
I would say, you know what? I've changed my mind. I'm going to vote for Hillary Clinton because I'm really curious to see how much money she can steal in 4 years.
She grabbed $250 million since they left the White House. That's not a bad ticket, right?
Right.
Now, I have a theory that Donald Trump has a large ego, which, by the way, so don't I.
Yeah.
And people who have egos are very much interested in making sure that they have. Barack Obama has a huge ego. He's going to do a good job because of his ego.
Yeah.
His ego demands it.
Right. He's all about going to be about legacy too.
Not legacy. It's greater than legacy.
Right. And here's the difference between a Trump legacy and a Barack Obama legacy. Mm-hmm. Barack Obama has been playing politics to kind of create a specious kind of veneer around his legacy, as opposed to I think what Donald Trump will do, a very deep legacy where he will be focused on policy. I've always said it, good policy makes good politics, but I think in the Obama administration, it was all about politics. It was all about perception. It didn't matter what really was happening. All that matters is what he could convince the people it was happening. And that's the difference between what he
Would you say that Ben Carson is a decent human being?
Yes, I would.
He's going to have a prominent position in that administration.
Yeah.
I think that Health and Human Services might be a good place for him, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think, who do you think is going to be a chief of staff?
Well, the head of the transition team is Chris Christie.
No. Chris Christie is got problems because of that Bridgegate thing.
Well, it doesn't matter anymore, though.
Well, they're going to hide him for a while. They have
He was on the stage last night, or this
I
morning.
understand that, but they're still going to hide him. That's because of loyalty.
Right.
That's, and by the way, the fact that Trump got elected saved his bacon because he would have been a persona non grata.
Howie Carr wants to be the maitre d' down at Mar-a-Lago.
That would be the southern White House, by the way.
That's right, yeah.
I think that Newt Gingrich would make a tremendous chief of staff because he knows how to deal. See, Trump needs political people who know how to move the bureaucracy around.
Right.
I don't think Ben Carson is that type of person. His personality is not that. But he's such a decent man. He should have a high profile in there. And also, Governor Huckabee was beautiful, and he's well measured. I'm trying to figure out where he belongs.
What about Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham?
Well, one of them is going to be his spokesperson, that's for sure. You know, like the Tony Snow or the Dana Perino, all right?
Yeah.
Head of communications, stuff like that. No, Hannity is going to be his anchor and is the TV station that they're going to put together, him and Steve Bannon and his family. What about his kids? I mean, all of them are very, prominent.
You know, and you were saying earlier, you were talking about how he has a big ego.
A good be a positive.
Right, but and this is something that, I think people maybe underestimate the value of confidence in just how you can perform. If you go into an exam or anything where you have to compete and you're confident because you're prepared or whatever, you're going to do well. If you go in and you're second guessing yourself, you're not going to do well. So being confident is really a big and important key to success for anyone. And I think that that's a big part of how he's been able to succeed as well as he has, because there's no lack of confidence there. You know
who else he's going to put in a key position? Seriously, Prius, Reince
Prius. Yeah,
he's going to put him because he did yeoman work. And by the way, he spoke glowingly about the type of person he isn't. See, everybody says that one-on-one, when you talk to him, he's very gracious. Even Megyn Kelly said that. He's a very decent, his bombacity doesn't seem to translate
right.
in other places. So you have him. I think Scott Walker's got a place in his administration too. If he decides.
If he wants it. Yeah.
Right. So I think he's going to build a really good team. And by the way, his outreach to the minority community, which he campaigned on that to rebuild the inner cities.
That's the first thing he said in his speech.
That's what he said.
I'm rebuilding the inner cities.
Right off the get-go. He is going to be the best friend of the African American community and the Hispanic community, because they're the ones who have been vilified by the they've been forgotten.
They haven't been vilified. They have been victimized.
And victimized. Great word. And he would like to move in that, and I applaud him for that, because that's the outreach that has to happen.
So let's talk about that, because I always use this as an example. Back in the late 50s, when Eisenhower was the president, and
by the way, never held office either.
Right, before he went in. That's right. And Lyndon Johnson was the president of the Senate. Mm-hmm. Eisenhower had a civil rights proposal that he wanted to put forward, but Johnson blocked it. Because he didn't want to give credit to the Republicans.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Okay, and then they ended up in '65. Everybody knows that Johnson led the charge as the president of the civil rights movement, and it became a Democrat thing, right? Okay, so that, put that aside for a moment. Now let's fast forward to 2017 and beyond. If Donald Trump is going to put all of his energies into rebuilding the inner cities and making sure that the opportunity is made available to all the people that live in the inner cities, frankly, regardless of color of skin or whatever.
Not interested in that.
Right. He wants to rebuild the cities. What are the Democrats going to do to try to stop it? Because they're not going to want the Republicans to.
They can't stop it. He's got the Senate and he's got the House of Representatives.
There you go.
So they can't. And plus, on the next election cycle, favors the Republicans significantly in the Senate, right? And in the House.
But you know that they're going to want to try, though, right? They're going to try to figure out.
They don't want success going. But here is the part that where they make a mistake. Also, he talked about the primacy of infrastructure, the airports, roads, bridges, etc. That's jobs.
Right.
That's like a WPA jobs program from a takeaway from the FDR era, which, as you well know, most of Lynn, all those beautiful walls we see, the Gannon Golf Course, was all done at that time, right? So that's going to create jobs for inner city folks You know,
And, you know, they refer to the recession that started in 2008 and 9 as the greatest recession since the Depression.
Yeah.
And this is about the same time in the history of, you know, in the cycle from the Great Recession as is the time from the Depression when they actually went to the WPA, right?
very good, Paul.
So it actually is, it's history repeating itself.
What about the wall? That wall is a great jobs
He didn't
program,
mention
too.
that, and I think that was intentional that he left it out, but...
Yeah, but the wall has to go up because it's part of his platform. But the wall is a metaphor. What it's going to, you're going to have to use U.S. concrete, U.S. steel, U.S. labor. That's all benefits the economy. Every
Right.
single bit of it.
Especially if Mexico pays for it.
Mexico will pay for it. And what he meant by that, and I wish people would understand it, we have a balance, we have a negative balance of trade with Mexico.
Right.
So what he's saying is, instead of us owing you 10 billion
We're gonna-
or 20 billion, we're taking it off the top to build a wall. That's what's going to happen. Instead of us giving you 50 billion, we're
Right.
going to give you 40.
And metaphorically, as you said, it's all about, you know, creating that boundary that allows us to keep our sovereignty or get it back. I should say.
Well, I want to thank you for once, you know, giving me a bouquet way back a year or two ago when we were talking about unaccompanied minors and immigration, and I said to you, Paul, it's a very simple formula: secure the border, shut off immigration for 5 to 10 years, absorb the 10, 11 million that we have, absorb them, educate them, and then revisit it. That's the perfect formula, Paul. You enforce the laws, secure the border, and find a way of integrating and absorbing the ones
Right.
who are here illegally.
And it will require that some bad actors go back.
That's right. And you send out any of your bad ones. You know, the beautiful, you know, the sanctuary cities are gone, as you well know. Gone. And it's a good thing.
Right.
Look, io parlo italiano. I'm an immigrant, bilingual. My family.
Right.
I love immigrants. I come from it. Particularly those kids I see from Central America. They work like, you know, they work their tails off. I see them every day down to 7-Eleven stores while I'm scratching, going to work, you know, at hard stuff. So you got to admire that.
Right.
That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the point that if you're a nation of laws, you must enforce the laws. You can't do it. Hillary Clinton proposed to Wall Street to have open borders from the Straits of Magellan to Nome, Alaska.
She dreams of open borders.
Dreams.
Right.
That means you might as well kiss your sovereignty goodbye. The rest of the world says, hold it, time out. We don't want to be part of this World One community. We don't. Oh, you know who likes that? You know, Amazon.com likes that, who happens to be the Washington Post, right?
Right.
And
It makes it easier for them to sell their
absolutely,
goods.
and Apple and Google, they want to be the guys pulling all the strings with their integrated world. I like diffusion of power. I like fragmented power. We were talking earlier today with Sean, who, by the way, did a nice job in your absence, Sean Donahue, who happens to run.
If I got anything to worry about?
You know, what can I tell you? But you remember we were talking about trying to explain to him about the Electoral College and its efficacy,
Right.
which is to make sure that there's not a concentration of power.
Right.
And that's what it's all about. I mean, why does every state, regardless of population, have 2 senators? You folks know why?
It's all about, because the 100 senators were supposed to represent the states.
Because
not the
well, but
electorate.
no, before the state of Delaware, which had a small population, joined the 13, they said, wait a second, if you're going to predicate everything on the House of Representatives, we're not going to have any say in our destiny. So regardless of our population, you know,
You
we're not
gotta give
joining
us
unless we
something.
have 2 senators like everybody else, right? We have an equal playing field, so we have a check and balance against a House of Representatives that's going to turn around and force things down our throat that we don't
Right.
want.
Yeah, New York is going to win every argument. So is Virginia.
Well, at that time, Virginia, Massachusetts,
Right.
right? So, what folks don't realize is the 10th Amendment to the Constitution is states' rights, right? Is that the
Yep.
one?
Yep.
States' rights? That was adjudicated by conquest. In other words, South Carolina said, see you later. I don't want to belong to this club called the United States anymore. I was a sovereign nation that chose to join against the British.
It was like a Brexit.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so when they took a hike, you know, at Fort Sumter, right? Well, Abraham Lincoln said, "Oh, really?" He sent the troops down there. The Civil War was conquering those states that wanted to say goodbye and form their own little situation. And you could argue that the 14th, 15th, and 16th Amendment, or whatever, the 13th, I don't know when it started, that they're all illegal because you need 3/4 of the states to ratify,
and they only had
were in
the
rebellion.
North.
Yeah,
They only had the North to vote on.
only the North voted on them. So, I mean, these are fascinating things that, talk about constitutional crisis. But you made a great point about this whole issue a little earlier when we were talking to Sean about the balance between the majority and the minority and stuff like that in the republic. I mean, you favor a Republican. We are a republic.
Right. And I hear that a lot of times. I hear a lot of times people say, "Oh, this is a democracy. You're ruining our democracy." It's not a democracy. It's a republic. It's a representative republic.
Exactly.
Right? In other words, we send people to vote on our behalf.
That's right. But it protects the minority. That's the key. In these other countries that have direct democracies, that's where you end up with tyrants.
Right.
Which
Which
FDR almost was.
And in effect, with all the levers of power being controlled by the Democrats and Hillary Clinton on the verge of winning this election, we were there, weren't we?
On the brink.
We were on the brink of being there. So we really got our country back today.
Yeah, we did, because the Supreme Court particularly.
Yeah.
Okay, so adjustments can be made, but we're going to see, this country.
Because, by the way, the first thing that they would have done,
Go ahead.
among the things that we all know about, like the Second Amendment and so forth and so
That
on,
was gone.
They were going to go after the Electoral College. They were going to make it go to. They were going to.
Oh, they would try to do that because
Right.
that benefits them,
Right.
to get rid of the Electoral College.
Right.
Academia took a beating, by the way.
Right.
The other day, I was reading an article, an opinion piece in the Lynn Item, written by a professor. Her last name, I remember, was Sandberg, and another fellow who was in pharmacy, a professor of pharmacy. In effect, they were arguing about the inadequacies of men, about why women are more dominant and should be president because they have more stamina, and went on and on and on, that Donald Trump is older and men tend to die earlier than women, and heart attacks and this and that. So I'm putting up all these statistics of why men are imperfect beings by Miss Sandberg. She has sexual studies and differentials at some college, university. What they fail to tell you, and this is what kills me, women now are dying at the same rate as men. The reason why men were dying earlier or had a shorter life expectancy than women was
War.
because of stress.
What about war?
War and stress.
Right.
Right. So now when women are in the workforce and they have to face all the stresses that comes from working and doing this and doing that, their cardiovascular system's falling apart too. So whatever biological advantages they may have had in certain directions are being walked out. And by the way, it's not just a gender thing. I mean, there are certain ethnicities that have a propensity for certain type of diseases versus other people. Is that correct? I mean,
I always, the one that always used to intrigue me, or it was bizarre to me, was sickle cell anemia.
Right, that's one.
Which is indicative of African Americans, right?
Well, it's peculiar. It's a higher incident.
Yeah, there's a sickle cell gene.
Right. So there are ethnic groups, there are subgroups that have differences. Doesn't mean better, Paul. Here's the problem that people have. If you're different, it's not a value-added situation. It's simply a difference.
Right.
Okay? So if someone's short or someone's tall, does it make one better than the other?
Yeah. By the way, Cokie Roberts.
Oh, please.
I don't know if you heard about what she said last night she's on MSNBC or whatever.
It had to be insane.
She's convinced that the reason why Trump won was because men will not have a woman president.
Of course she'd say that. She's been saying stuff like that, nutty stuff like that forever, okay?
Right.
Okay, well, what can I tell you? But what about Juan Williams? He completely lost it.
Yeah.
Did you watch him?
Him and Richard Fowler. It was.
Oh, Richard was...
Poor Richard.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
He was chasing himself, trying to figure out how to appear calm while the world was collapsing around him. You know, it's really interesting because I think, you know, we were talking last night, we were texting back and forth, and it's like Karl Rove
well, he's a Bush guy.
Right, and these people were, you know, didn't really want to see Trump win. So as the facts were starting to flow in, they were trying to figure out how to
Discount it.
Yeah, discount it so that.
Oh, yeah.
Which doesn't make any sense, because if you think about it, the end result is going to be the end result. You might as well just
They
go
couldn't
along with it.
accept it. You know, it was hilarious when Karl Rove and Chris, his show's gone now because, you know,
Steiwalt. Yeah.
oh, he was in the bag. I mean, he was rooting against Trump like you couldn't believe consistently. All right. Well, they were talking about Ohio and why, you know, he's underperforming and this and that, and Hemmer says, "What are you talking about?" Remember, he says, and he showed them.
Right, that right along the river, right?
Yeah, he showed them, and he won by 10 points or 11 points. Ohio, you know, it's supposed to be.
And he had the same kind of argument down in Florida that Broward County hadn't fully delivered yet.
Yeah. Well, it's gonna go. Yeah.
Even though there was that the central district that hadn't reported yet that was all Republican.
Well, they all went to get the nitroglycerin when Pennsylvania came in, right? I mean, God Almighty! I mean, you know, it is poetic justice. That's all it is. And what I'm hoping, and I firmly believe this, that I think that Donald Trump is going to put good people in office, men, women, doesn't care, because his corporation demonstrates that. He puts women in high positions.
He's going to put the right
minorities
person for the job.
Yeah, he is going to take merit. See, here's what people, folks. Here's the key. Forget this affirmative action stuff, because that doesn't work. He's going to base everything on merit. You know what merit is? Merit is colorblind. It's gender blind.
Right.
You know that?
Yep. It should be.
Look, you're an executive.
Right.
You don't care what a person comes from, does, as long as they're competent with the job they do. If they can fill your job description, isn't that all that matters to you, really?
Yep.
Thank you. And they brush their teeth, of course. Right. So I think you're going to find a lot of that happening now, hopefully. I'm praying for it.
Yeah, I know it. You know, look, it's a long road ahead. I think for those who supported Trump and excited about the fact that we as the people of this country are getting our country back to some extent. It's a good thing, and there's an opportunity now to do some healing and get everybody kind of thinking about what's in the best interest of the country, and stop thinking about what's in my own personal best interest, and that kind of, you know, and letting things happen. Could be some good times ahead.
I like that smile on your face, Paul, even though I'm tired as heck. We're going to have to take a look here in our thoughts, because we've neglected our fan base.
We have.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, they send us comments. So if they send us comments, then we ought to do something about it. So let me go to the very last one that I see here. It says, those are issues happening not only in Lynn, but across the nation, and those need to be dealt with. It's the people like you that point it out and make them hesitant. Thank you very much for saying that. You know, and it has to do with voting fraud. You know, trust in government.
Well, you know, so can we talk? Are we almost done? Can we talk briefly about
what do we got there for time?
Why don't we talk about voting fraud next week? Because I'd like to at least.
We got about 5 minutes, Paul.
Oh, okay. Because you know, and you know, I mean, there were two. Donald Trump said the system was rigged, right? He was talking about the system being rigged. It was kind of there's two kind of riggings going on. One was the establishment, the media, the finance guys, and all of them being in cahoots, the elites or whatever. And then there was the rigging that was going on with that guy, the guy that was a Democratic operative that was going around and trying to blow up Trump rallies and he.
Oh yeah.
And then they got this stuff where they're trying to sneak in the ballots and all that kind of stuff, and all that kind of crap going on. That kind of stuff, think we need to figure out how to stop even the hint of it. You know, the Democrats and George Soros, they will tell you that anything that we do to try to tighten up the rules around voter fraud and
Well,
so
George
forth.
Soros got his way because Sheriff Joe was defeated.
Right. Spent
So-
$2 million over
to
there.
defeat him. And frankly, Nevada would never have gone Democrat if it wasn't for the SEIU and Harry Reid pulling all the stops
Right.
to get his replacement a Democrat and to put Nevada into.
But I think that everything that Soros was doing was in some ways an attempt to manipulate the outcomes of elections. There's just no question in my mind.
Of course he did.
And they always use the argument that, oh, if you require a license or some type of picture ID at the voting booth, you're making it more difficult for, you know, people of color. And I just don't buy it, because you can't do anything this day and age without having an ID. I mean, you can't. I mean, you're 70-something years old. If you went into a liquor store, what are the chances that you'll be carded to get a beer?
Paul, when I was smoking, they'd card me, and I'd say, what do you think, I'm 18? I've just made it over the
Right.
18. I mean, that's how silly the laws are.
Right.
And by the way, do you ever go shopping at Market Basket? Did you ever say, I'm going to put this on my credit card? What's the first thing they ask you for?
Proof of ID.
Your driver's license.
Right.
Otherwise, they're not going to allow you to use your credit card.
So to say that there are people that would be unfairly impacted in their ability to vote because they had to carry an ID with them it's fallacious. It's just not possible. I just don't buy it. And I think we really need to tighten up those rules. I really do. And another thing that would really be good, one of the things that George Soros did was he made it a point. He's been trying to impact the secretaries of states in all 50
Oh,
states,
yeah,
right?
of course, because that runs the elections.
Right, because they run the elections. And I think that should be a nonpartisan position. How's that?
That's a great idea, Paul. How does that happen? So that would mean the legislature can appoint it. How would it happen? That's the key.
You have to swear off any allegiance to any political party if you want to be one. In other words, you have to be a truly impartial person if you're going to do it. You have to pass an
You have
impartiality
to have 10
test.
years as an unenrolled person or something to that effect. Huh?
Yeah, why not, right?
Yeah, not a bad idea. I have to think about the mechanics of that. So fundamentally, we're looking at the fact that 34 or 50 states and D.C. do early voting. That's a great subject. And I don't feel we have a whole bunch of time, but I am totally
I don't like
opposed to early voting.
Even though you early voted.
I early voted,
Right.
but I'm opposed to it because there's variables that can happen.
How about the Comey announcements? The
double.
Two of them. I
Right.
mean, if you voted right before he announced in 11 days before the election or the day after, your votes might be different, right? And then again, the day before and the day after the second, when he went back and said, nothing to see here, folks, move along.
Well, it's glad to have you back, Paul, smiling and happy with the results of last night. And for you folks out there, I know in Massachusetts you're sad, but you have to take a look at it in the long term. For all of us here at Frankly Speaking and Lynn TV, Community TV, have a great week.